Ms. O'Neill, I believe you wanted to, did you want to start?
Yes, I think we had basically a review and discussion of the city parks. I think obviously there was information regarding the current CRA funding. Also, as you know, with the demolition of the pier, I think we're still waiting on some information on the other from the state of Florida.
That's correct.
Right. That's been ongoing for quite some time. I think we also had information regarding the grants that were, we would get an update on. And obviously, the grant money, including what we had from Pasco County in relation to the Department of U.S. Treasury, and that process. I think we go back and, as we can address parks, I think we're all familiar that. Oh, sorry, my mic wasn't on. You can hear me though, right? That we obviously had grants in relation to Winslow Park. We've also done work at two other parks. And what we haven't done, and looking in relation to these grants, is actually Waterfront Park. I think we had conversations regarding the moving of the boat ramp. We had questions about parking access in that particular area. And Mayor, I just think with all the information, part of the discussion that we haven't had is in association mainly with Waterfront Park. Some time ago, there has been actually, and I think most of you still have it, a very large diagram as well as several smaller diagrams that were very detailed as we talked about the multiple dollars that would be needed to actually reshape Waterfront Park, including the restrooms, including having functions, which we have. I don't think in my 10 years up here we've had very many functions at all. We've had the birthday party. We're now talking again about the 4th of July. Something that we haven't talked about is that although there would be some funding, and as yet we still have ongoing discussions, and the next council will have ongoing discussions about the grant money as well. You know, one thing that isn't said is that, as you indicated, look tonight, we have grant money available that we're obviously not going to utilize at this particular point in relation to the large discussion that we had. Well, if you look at Waterfront Park and reshaping a portion of that, now Nancy has talked about having the water park thing over there. We've had a couple things reshape the actual look of that park. Also, you know, along those lines, if you're just taking bits and pieces, and you know, obviously it seems to me, as being here for a while, that, you know, funding is slow. I don't think that even when we just isolate Waterfront Park in general, we talk about not having parking, we talk about not having ramp, and so forth. Is there any exploration to Port Richey not having basically control of that park? Is that any conversation to be had, the fact that, number one, grant money, so you're going to fix the bathrooms for who? And for what? You're going to, we saw, and you know, look, you folks were against having any kind of moving the boat ramp and leave the parking as it is. This property, I don't know what it's particularly worth, was taken off of the tax rolls many years ago. If there's about 11 acres out there, and any extension thereof with what that represents, what is a process or what's involved if, you know, that basically, you know where I'm going. We you know, look at basically you're giving that back, and you're saying somebody else is going to be able to do something with that obviously Port Richey is never going to be able to do too much with that. And
No.
maybe overall, that's all you want, is a couple bathrooms, and just let it remain what it is. But if we aren't going to be able to keep some type of long-range plan, and we have not been able to, how long are we going to keep not exploring other options that might be available?
I have no problem exploring. I think not having rebuilt the pier was a mistake. We should have done it. And all these people that don't live on the water, they're not as lucky as we are. I used to take my kid out there. We could fish. And if I was gonna do anything to the park, that's what I would do. If Nancy wanted to bring up the other alternative, or maybe both, to do that. I think getting out of the FCT control is, I don't think we can. I think we can do what we want and they can take it back. But they paid us the money for it, and we're really under a very low impact park. So the pier makes sense. I always saw kids from my house. I could see it. I don't know if you all want to explore. I don't know if we can buy it back. I don't think so, but I don't know what, you know.
Well, I'm not
As far as
certainly
putting
suggesting
tiles
we
in the
buy it.
bathroom, I'm not.
I don't know if it's ours to sell. I mean,
No, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, I
Right.
mean, it's,
No,
it's,
it's
you know,
ours.
if
but
we
it's
were to,
ours
if we were
under
to say
their
now,
rule.
we don't want to run it anymore, then it basically would transfer over to, say, the county, and then the county would run it as a park, and we still wouldn't get any money off of it, because it would still be a park, and then we just basically, you know, that's assuming the county wanted to even get involved, so, you know.
I have
is what it is.
always
But my
wanted-
problem is, excuse me, just for a
Right, I'm
second,
sorry.
and then I'll finish up. You know, I hear talk about the splash pad, I hear you talking about we should have rebuilt the pier. Last cost estimate I heard on rebuilding the pier was like $250,000. It was a lot of darn money. I don't see any appetite right now for spending any money on anything after spending several hours here tonight, even with something which has a potential payback to it, you know, which a pier doesn't. We put up a pier, okay, you know, I mean, it's great stuff, but, you know, then the inevitable question's gonna come up, this is gonna cost money, the engineering and all this, blah, 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 and then everybody's gonna say, no, we can't afford to do it. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's
don't
kind
know
of a
about that, but
catch
if we can
22.
expand this discussion, and I'd like to put on the next agenda, why we haven't put a kiosk up and charged, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be ignoring you, and charged for boat launching is beyond me. That's where we paid, since I've been on council and the time I wasn't, we paid $122,000. And we're not charging a nickel for everybody out of the city to launch there. That's a $10 launch. It's done at Anclo, it's done down in Dunedin, it's done everywhere. That's a $2,000, Mr. O'Neill said to me, it's a $2,000 to pay for the kiosk. Some of our citizens will have to pay. That's the way it is because it's on that CBDG grant. But if we could do that, now you've monetized something that we're paying for that is not even our citizens. And I don't know why we don't do that. And I would be all for putting parking meters in next park, put your money in, or you go park somewhere else. So, you know, I'm in very strictly against spending money for things that aren't immediately necessary. I'm very much for trying to monetize the area and any comments on this side?
Well, I don't think that we should bring any more projects forward after what's happened this evening. We have too many budgetary issues. Look at the budget and stay on the budget and do nothing but do that budget for the next year. So I guess our council meetings will be damn short. So.
Terry, any thoughts?
Well, I'd like to see something done, but money's always the problem. But it seems like there's been a change of direction on that park so many times in so many ways. I would like to get us focused somehow, find a way to focus this council so we can move forward with what we want, how we want that park to perform. And when I look back over the years that I've been here, the few things that I've seen it do, and do well, were the fireworks. There were a few times we had bands there during the 4th of July. Being it's low impact, there's not a whole lot of things we can do. We want to do the bathrooms over, that's fine, but they better be bomb-proof because
They're not.
they just
Cement walls
do
are what
not
you
survive
need in that bathroom.
what we have going on out there with the homeless and everything else. They have to, I like them to be pretty, but they can't be. They're gonna have to just be basic, functional, bomb-proof bathrooms. And if we could add some type of a band shell or something in there, and maybe we'd show movies, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. But it would give us a center point in this city to have functions and bring the people together. And I think we've seen that happen.
There is a sense
Well-
of community that I think we lack, and I don't, the only problem I have, and not, maybe you could, or Mr. Public can answer. There must be a way we can generate some monies. I know that I've read the FCT agreement a million times. We can have vendors, they would pay the city.
Right.
We can bring in music and do a Woodstock sort of thing. I don't know if you'd ever find a,
Boy, are you dating yourself?
like that.
Well, you've had a few events there, and we could get back to that,
Did we
but,
do
you know,
well? I
you got,
don't know.
well, maybe on a few, but, you know, you've got, and I'll be brief, I know it's late, but, you know, you've got grant money and looking forward with the bathrooms. I think we really have to focus, and it's gonna be very difficult if all we're gonna be talking about is the budget for the next year. Good luck with the next council, have a lot of fun. However, if you look at now a centerpiece issue with the almost $70,000, you know, in looking, you know, the timeline, and maybe Tom can speak to this very briefly, is that, you know, this is fast approaching. And if we're just gonna let that maybe go by the wayside too, and not utilize, when we talked about Channel 1, Chuck talked about Channel 18, you've been the king for the dredge. And I would say at this particular point, there's a lot of folks out there that aren't expecting to get any money. And I'll be honest with you, Sand Pebble's certainly one of those, but
You
if there's
mean for
going to be,
dredging?
if there's going to be some type of catalyst going forward, I think we've all pretty much come to the assumption that that would be Channel 1 and Channel 18, as is outlined in the current form. Whether or not that, you know, I mean, we're already, you know, in March, and,
I
you
think,
know.
when do we get the money?
We have to approve an interlocal agreement. We now are responding to some additional questions by the Treasury. We're going to meet this week with Curtis Franklin, and I would look for an interlocal to come from the county within the next month to 2 months.
Okay, then, Steve, you know, as far as the park, I'm open to any suggestions. I did think that the rendering we had would be so costly in maintenance, you know, with all the boardwalks and this and that, and bat caves and views. I like those, but I don't think we want to go that direction. The pier, I think, is a drawing point. I don't know, we couldn't charge people to fish, could we? Okay, never mind.
Well, we couldn't do anything with the engineering. We obviously had that expenditure go forward. We barely got 10 years out of what was out there the second time.
Well.
And as Bill indicated, yeah, instead of a 180, which was projected, we would have considerable amount of money, unfortunately, for what would be, I think, a good, you know, I'm certainly a fan of someone being able to go fishing,
Right.
not having to use a boat, but.
Well, I would say if everybody wants to have a pier there,
And there are grants.
we should look for grants, one, and two, Tom and I disagreed on this forever. Get a build design guy. Get a guy that does marine. It isn't Wade, Trim, or Taylor. They do that on 1% of their entire thing. The guys that build docks, and they know how to build them. And that problem out there wasn't all the builder's fault. I don't think we ever one time in 15 years coded it, which it should be done every year. And as those pilings were coming up, if somebody had told us, we just got somebody in, level it, put it back. Part of it was on us.
Well, more people would certainly like to have access to park their boat other than just the Hooters and Whiskey River, so forth. I think if you look as a whole, how many boats can actually get there, and I don't know what plans are in the future for those locations, and
How many
better
boats could
access
get-
to boats that
Oh,
can
to
park
the-
and go into the restaurants and go.
That
I mean,
is-
I know what Hooters has, but, I think we also talked with the waterfront that, and Tom maybe has already done this with the Brazilian peppers and cutting things so that folks had, we created a better view within the waterfront park. And I don't know that that's something that we've even been able to push forward, that some of our own, maybe Public Works, along with Tom's certifications and so forth, would be able to move forward. But at least it's a move forward, and it's not costing us.
I think
much.
that's a very good idea. I also think that, we can get some grant money. Mr. Franklin told us, we are number one on all this list, and, if we don't take the money, we're number 90, or, it's one of those bait and switch things. I believe we can find grant money, and I believe we can build it for a whole lot less than $250,000. So if you would like to say, let's go to bid, or, better yet, I can make a phone call. Hey, something marine.
Well, if we can
I
just
know
explore some of
there's
these things.
certain laws that I'd be breaking, they'd probably put me in jail, but.
I mean, I think, I don't know when our next CRA is, but, obviously this would maybe, go to the next council, that you would at least be moving forward with coming back to Waterfront Park and addressing some particular.
I would really feel comfortable if we sent this Port Authority board, let them vet
I'm fine with it.
these, the dock builders, et cetera, and don't use money. Let them call them, let them bring them in. Is there anything illegal about that, Tom? I can't keep up with it.
Well, you're going to need to go to bid in some form or another, and then ultimately it'll come back to the CRA or City Council for your review and approval. So as we did with the demolition, that was a design build. So we do that where we can, and we could explore doing that with a pier that could be constructed again.
We have
We actually
drawings,
have
right?
contract documents, and I think there's a way that we could put those together in a suitable bid package to avoid an additional consultant on that.
I don't want any more engineers on it. I think any thoughts on this side?
It sounds good to me. Not to get off topic, but where are we with the pier on the other side, Senator Simpson and all that?
We've applied for a state appropriation with Senator Wilton Simpson's office. He was successful in getting it in the budget last year, in the state budget. It was line item vetoed by Governor Scott. I'm confident that it again will be in the budget, and I will ask Senator Simpson how that we may be able to lobby or perhaps let the state legislature know, or governor's office, how much that pier means to the city of Port Richey. So hopefully we can have a different story this year, but there's no guarantees as we speak.
Okay. Any motions? We want to, how about we send it to the Port Authority Board, ask for their thoughts?
That's fine.
And, from my standpoint, wherever the line goes for dredging, assuming we get it ever, the pier's sitting on the show that they wanted to put those boat launches on. And there's just no water there at low tides. If we could extend it out probably 30 feet-ish, the kids that actually have some deep water, other than low, high tide deficient. So, can you just put it on the Port Authority
Sure.
board?
Yeah.
Let them come back to us with something. If, with y'all's permission, I'll go look into, well, I think Mr. O'Neill already looked into the kiosk thing for
Yes,
launching
we
a boat.
did that. That was in front of the CRA at one point.
Okay.
I have all the information still on that.
I would, if you would send me that, I'd like to re-explore that.
Well, we had samples of it, we had all kinds of things that, over several meetings, but, you know,
I
we
might
couldn't charge
fund it.
outside, you know, if we're gonna charge outside resident, we had to charge Port Richey.
Yeah,
Port
we
Richey
have to.
residents couldn't get it for free.
And there's, you know, that's the way it is. We're not making that law, but we're not excluding 0.5% of the city that launches at that park. And we do have to charge them. That's what we have to do.
And there are only so many spots, and they're full quick.
Exactly. And you know, I've even tinkered with the idea of I'll fund that whole thing, and when you guys think we're making enough money, you can have it. And I'm just giving me my money back, but, it's, you know, I mean, we're just losing money, and we have.
I need a new truck too.
You need a truck?
I need a new truck.
Well,
I
on
have
the
a
ramp
motion for
itself,
Mr. O'Neill, a truck.
could that be examined? Would that be a Port Authority too, that we talked about having a little bit more room over there right now? It seems like a lot of boats, just one of them goes down. Actually, you've got enough room on each side, but from what I hear, and maybe Pat knows, you know, going down that particular Nick's Park ramp, you're very limited. And
You gotta
while
be
we've
good.
done $50,000 worth of work over there in relation to, I believe, a grant we did receive, that was one section that we did not get to. And I don't know if we also had to have some negotiations with, obviously, the neighbors in that effort. Maybe that's something, would they be
Send it.
allotted to check that out?
There's some good brains on that board.
Yeah, I mean, if possible, I would like to include that too.
Okay, you got that on?
Sure.
All right. And then I think we are ready for that famous,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Have to be contrary,
Can't have.
I know what to say.